Let's begin. Pathetic story. The Little Match Girl is a pathetic story of a poor little girl that touches the hearts of the readers. The story begins on the cold winter night in which snow never stopped. The weather was rough. The match girl and her slippers. It was New Year's Eve and dreadfully cold. In this cold and darkness there went along a street of a poor little girl that is bareheaded and with naked feet. When she left home, she had slippers on. It is true, but they were much too large for her feet. Her mother had used those slippers till then, but the poor little girl lost them. Running across the street, then two carriages were quickly passing by. When she looked for them, one was not to be found, and a boy grabbed the other and ran away with it. So the little girl walked on with a tiny naked feet that were quite red and blue from cold. The match girl selling matches. She cried a quantity of matches in one old apron, and she held a bundle of them in her hand. No one had bought so much as a bunch all long day, and no one had given her even a penny. She crept along trembling with cold and hunger. She felt miserable. Heavy fall of snow. The flakes of snow covered her long fair hair. Then she fell in the beautiful curls around her neck, but she did not think of her beauty and the cold. Lights shone from her window and she could feel the delicious smell of the roast goose being cooked for the New Year's evening in all the houses. She saw not stop even thinking about it. In a corner between two houses, she sat down. She tucked her little feet underneath herself, but still she grew colder and colder. She did not dare to go home, as she had not sold any matches and could not bring any money. Her father would certainly not be pleased. He could be sure to beat her. Besides, it was cold enough at home as they had only a roof above them that was full of holes. Dreams of iron stove. What were the dreams of iron stove? So, her little hands were almost numb with cold, and she thought that a match might warm her fingers. If she lit it, she drew out one and strung it. It blazed and burnt and gave out a warm, bright flame like a little candle as she held her hands over it. It was a wonderful light. It really seemed to the girl as if she sat in front of the great iron stove with a lovely fire inside it. It burned so nicely that the little girl stretched out her feet to warm them. She felt very comfortable, but then the flame went out. The stove vanished, and nothing remained. She had only the remains of the burnt out match in her hand. She rubbed another match against the wall. It burnt brightly, and where the light fell on the wall, she could suddenly see in the room. A snow white cloth was spread on the table, on which were laid beautiful china plates, while the stuffed roast goose cooked away and made a most delicious smell. And what was more delightful and wonderful? The goose jumped from the dish with knife and fork still in its breast, and waddled along the floor straight towards the little girl. But the match went out then, and nothing was left to her but the thick, damp wall. Then she lit another match, and found herself sitting under the most magnificent Christmas tree. Thousands of candles were burning on the green branches, and little painted figures, like she had seen in shop windows, looked down on her. She stretched out her hands to them, but then the match went out. Still the lights of the Christmas tree burned higher and higher into the sky until she saw one fall, forming a long trail of fire. Now something is dying, said the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but who was now dead, had said, what whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God. Then she struck another match against the wall. It lit, and in its brightness her dear old grandmother appeared before her, beaming love and kindness. Granny, cried the little girl, oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the lovely roost goes, and the great glorious Christmas tree. And then she rubbed the whole bundle of matches quickly against the wall, for she wanted to keep her grandmother near her. They burnt with such brilliant light that it became brighter than the midday sun. Her grandmother had never looked so grand and beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and both flew joyfully towards, climbing higher far above the earth, away from cold and hunger, that is, to heaven. The next morning she was found frozen with a smile on her face. She had died on the last evening of the old year. No one imagined what beautiful things she had seen and how happily she had gone with her grandmother to the new year.